Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. Really appreciate you joining me today. And again, thank you so much for all the continued support here on YouTube. I'm amazed at how my channel is continuing to grow. And I'm so happy to see that what I'm creating here is resonating with so many of you. Let me show you guys something. I shot this photo the way I normally would. Standard frame size, nothing particularly unusual about it. And then I cropped it like this. This is the same image, the same moment, but a completely different feeling. And I have to say that kind of caught me off guard. I didn't use a different camera or a different lens, but the way I cropped the photo completely changed how I feel about it, and it started to get me thinking a little bit differently about especially my coastal photography. I've played around with aspect ratios in the past, but to be honest with you, I primarily shoot in the native 3:2 aspect ratio, which is standard on most full-frame digital cameras and is based on 35mm film. To be honest, when I've made cropping decisions in post, it's not been around panoramic images, and while I played around with creating stitch panoramas in the past, it wasn't something I'd spent a lot of time looking closely at. It wasn't until I applied one of these XPan-style wide panoramic crops to one of my coastal images that I noticed that it gave the image a completely different feeling, and it's something I started to look more deeply into, and I found it breathed life into some old work and made me look at this particular style of photography completely differently. I've talked in the past about how I like to try and create images that represent the way that I felt while I was in the place taking them. And applying this XPan crop to these coastal photographs didn't just make them wider, it kind of quieted them down and made them more intentional. So this unique wide panoramic look comes from the Hasselblad XPan camera, which was created by Hasselblad starting in 1998 and used 35mm film at an aspect ratio of 24:65 to create wide negatives that could then be blown up with high detail and resolution. Now this camera is no longer in production. It is available secondhand, but at pretty eye-watering price tags. And so I'm using digital cameras to recreate this look by cropping with that particular crop factor in post. And the wonderful thing about modern digital cameras is that we can do this without little loss to the output of the image quality when we go to print or blow up large on a display. I've got to be honest that until I started applying this particular aspect ratio to my coastal photography, I thought it was kind of gimmicky. I'd see it used by others online, and while the images were often impressive, it was more about the aspect ratio as opposed to the subject matter in the photography. It wasn't until I went back and applied it to some of my recent work that I'd taken on the coastline of New Jersey that I noticed something changed in the way I was seeing the images. So why does this type of aspect ratio work for coastlines? Well, often when we're taking pictures of coastal areas, especially just say the open sea or a shoreline, it's pretty much three things. It's sky, the horizon, and then water. You might have some other objects sprinkled in there between, maybe rock formations or a boat or a person, but it really boils down to those three things being the core subjects within your image. I think when you stretch out a frame like this with simple elements, the horizon stops becoming just a line and starts becoming an anchor in the photo. I think the negative space becomes stronger, and items that may have appeared larger in images before often start to seem a lot smaller, which emphasizes to me how powerful and expansive oceans and shorelines can be. I feel like the images have a lot more breathing room. Here's what surprised me most about this particular experience. It hasn't just changed the way that I edit images. It's changed the way that I think about taking them when it specifically relates to my coastal photography. When I'm out in these areas now, I often start to think about how an image would look in an XPan crop. And I make more intentional decisions about what's not and what is in the frame when I'm thinking about taking an image in a panoramic like this. I've definitely started composing images differently when I'm thinking about using this particular crop. I often find that I'm leaving a lot more space in the image. I like to simplify the foreground and make sure that I don't have too many distracting elements. And I'm thinking about what is in the frame in kind of a very narrow band of the image and how that will look once I've gone to crop the digital image in post. I think this is a fairly subtle shift, but it's making a big impact on how I'm thinking about my coastal photography going forward. I think it's really important to point out here that we often think about changes in perspective having to be some big dramatic thing, like going to a new country or a new location, changing your equipment, so maybe using a different lens or a different camera. But the reality is, you can go back to your old work, apply a different crop to those images, and they can have a completely different feeling and meaning. And in turn, that can make us as photographers go out into the field with a different set of eyes on, and maybe look at the way we're producing work in a different manner. I think one of the great things about modern digital cameras is that we're not constrained to shooting in one particular format. Many of the cameras that we have available today actually allow you to apply things like these panoramic crops so that you can do them in camera. You know, in-body image stabilization and the powers of programs like Lightroom also allow us to stitch panoramics. But I think what's really important is that when you're out in the field, that you start to think about this, and if you're curious, just give this a try. A couple of things I can kind of advise you on when trying to make images like this. I think you need to be very aware that an image can try to be as clean as possible and not have too many distractions in it. You want to obviously make sure that your horizons are nice and straight and square. And I think the probably most important thing to remember is that often vertical items in images that are narrow like this can create problems if they intersect the top and the bottom of the image. So you want to be kind of mindful about how you're placing certain items in the frame when you're out there doing this. But I would urge you to give it a try. I think it's a really unique way of presenting coastal photography, and I think it can be applied elsewhere as well, but for me, the coast is something I'm drawn to, so that's where I'm focusing on using it right now. And I think at the end of this, what you want to do is take one image that you would have taken in your normal aspect ratio, and then that same image cropped down to an XPan, and see which one speaks to you more. And maybe XPan isn't something for you, but I found that it really resonated, especially in this particular style of photography. First of all, I want to thank all of you for sticking with me to the end of this video. I really appreciate the continued support here on YouTube, and the channel continues to grow at a pace that I'm really happy with. We are well on our way to 500 subscribers, and in fact, we may well have hit that by the time that this particular video airs. Thank you for taking the time for watching this today. I hope you got something out of it. And I think the point of this video is just again to reiterate that we don't always need to make big dramatic changes in a photography to have a significant impact on the work we've already produced and the work that we're going to produce in the future. And sometimes something simple as applying a different crop or a different color grade can make all the impact in the world and make us see work differently, and then open a door to the way we might be photographing differently in the future. So again, thanks for checking this video out and supporting the channel. I appreciate it, and I will see you guys again soon.